we've had. I just want to take a few minutes and go over the highlights of the second part of this first unit that we're looking at on control and collaboration. And so, again, these are just a few of the key points that I want you to pay particular attention to as we look at the other side of control, which is collaboration. Now, as we said before with control, all organizations are going to have some degree of control. It's when it becomes excessive that it can become a problem for the organization. We hope that we can balance some needed control with collaboration and open communication. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So the nature of communication as it relates to collaboration is working jointly together and having a mutually beneficial relationship that is comprised by a collaborative spirit. So people want to be together, people want to communicate, people want to work together on something, and it has genuine dialogue. And so if you've read of Buber's work of the I Thou, what he says is that if we engage in authentic dialogue, we view that person as someone who is unique and special and has something relevant to say. If we're just trying to control, then number one, we may not even listen to them, and then number two, we may just go through the motions and know that we're going to get our way in the end. But authentic communication as it relates to collaboration requires that we look at that person as an individual and know that they have something to say and something important to offer. And so we take the time to listen and communicate. And through that communication, we form a collaborative spirit of people who want to work together and who want to communicate openly to be able to do so. Now, within this collaboration, it's important to consider who your stakeholders are. These are people who have a stake in or will be influenced by a decision. So sometimes these are people who are in the position to make final decisions. Sometimes your stakeholder is a person who may block your decision or who may be a devil's advocate and not agree with you. You may also include those people who will be affected by the decisions that you make, and those with some relevant power or expertise. Now, these are all people who should be important to any initiative that you're taking in your organization, any conversation that's taken place that's going to enact some type of change in the organization really needs to involve all of these kind of people. In a control or a more bureaucratic type of control where it's tightly controlled, really your only stakeholder is the person that maybe you report to. But in a collaborative environment, the stakeholder can take many forms, and it may not even be your formal supervisor. It may be, a colleague of yours who is going to be affected by the decisions that you're going to be making or the conversation you're going to have, and they need to be present. So a collaborative culture says that you involve the key stakeholders, and those may come from different roles, and they may have different interests in whatever it is that you're working on. You may also find that you have primary and secondary stakeholders. The primary stakeholders are the ones that have some of these decision-making capabilities. The secondary stakeholders may be just someone that you want to have in your corner, someone that you want to have support from that can help you get things done. There are some barriers to collaboration that you have to be aware of. A tightly coupled organization versus a loosely coupled. Tightly coupled means that groups tend to stick very closely together. And if you think of the silo, where you have different teams, maybe departments, pieces of the organization that work so tightly together that they can't see outside of themselves to collaborate with anyone. Versus a loosely coupled where you may have teams, but those teams recognize that they have to communicate across teams to make something happen. And that a loosely coupled organization typically responds better to collaboration. You also have to be aware that when you join an organization, there is a political context. There's a way that things are done. There are people who fall into these different stakeholder categories, and you have to learn that whole system. And sometimes that system can be a barrier to actual collaboration. If people begin to view their own interest as more important than the organization, if people begin to rely too heavily on that political context and who's talking to whom and playing political games, then that can influence collaboration. Epistemic communication, communication is one where Um, the organization may view a particular person or a particular group's expertise as being the only expertise needed, and they don't listen to anyone else. And this can be a huge barrier because there are people all over an organization who can have great ideas who may not be particularly an expert in that area, but they can contribute. And so a collaborative culture says that, we understand that you have subject matter experts, but other people may have ideas too, and it's okay to listen. And then individualism. If you're in it more for yourself and or your particular team than the organization, then that can definitely be a barrier to communication and collaboration. Now, while there may be some barriers, we do know that there are benefits. Passion is created. People want to do the right thing. They want to do well by the organization. They want to make decisions that will positively impact the organization, and they have a passion for what they do. More ideas can be generated. If you look outside of yourself and outside of your own team, you can get more ideas. Sometimes people are threatened by that, but it's true. More ideas will come. There's an increased coordination. Coordination is a little bit different than collaboration. When we look at coordination, we look at how people actually function together and work together. So, for example, at UAMS when I was there were many different parts of the healthcare system that were actually using different patient record keeping systems. And so they didn't collaborate on, making sure that they were all in line. So a patient may go to the family clinic and have to fill out a certain pieces of information. But then if they went over to the Institute on Aging or the Spine Center, guess what? They had to fill out a whole new set of paperwork because there were two different systems being used. They weren't coordinated. So once collaboration started taking place and members of those groups started coming out and actually working together, they then began to see, okay, we're duplicating a lot of effort. So then the coordination became more prevalent. And now they have one system, ideally, as I think they do, one system that once a patient checks in somewhere or they filled out the paperwork, it's seen throughout the entire system. So that's the coordinated part that comes from collaboration. And then you have social capital. So social capital, you kind of know what a financial capital is, the money. The social capital is if you have collaboration, you have people who want to work well together. And the social capital can be worth a lot to an organization in terms of having engaged and satisfied employees. So the collaboration really does result in people who want to be together and who want to communicate together. Now, this is not saying that collaboration is easy. We'll get to that, that topic maybe in the next couple of weeks, but there can be conflict. There's going to be disagreements. But if at the heart of it, you really want to make it work and you want to work with people who may be different from you, may represent different parts of your company, you really want to collaborate, then you'll work through those things and you'll make great things happen.